everyone, and welcome back to our next episode of Big Data Talks, in which we have conversations with industry experts in the way in which data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are transforming the way we live. My name is Jan-Willem Middelburg, and I will be your host again today for this podcast show. You can always watch back one of the recordings on the Big Data Framework website, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Today, I have the extreme pleasure of introducing Mridula Kidiyur, a seasoned product manager with over 12 years of experience in retail and finance sectors. With a proven ability to lead large-scale program delivery, develop complex business requirements, and design innovative solutions, Mridula has established herself as a key player in the field. She holds a Master of Science in Information Systems from the Kelley School of Business, with a focus on business intelligence and analytics, with a Bachelor of Engineering in Information Science. Before her current role, Mridula has made significant contributions at Ernst Young in technology consulting, where she honed her skills in managing cross-functional teams that included C-suite executives, finance experts, analysts, data scientists, and IT engineers. Her technical expertise encompasses system implementation, process validation, project management, especially in Agile, and advanced data and analytics tools like SQL, Tableau, and Spotfire. Join us as we explore her insights and the role in which data is transforming everyday decisions. Mridula, it's an extreme pleasure to welcome you to Big Data Talks. You're dialing in from New York, is that correct?
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited and looking forward to our talk.
Absolutely. So, one of the key reasons I wanted to talk to you today is that you might have seen in our list of shows and the different kinds of topics that we cover, but one area was really lacking, and that was retail. And that's something where you have a lot of experience, and especially retail combined with business intelligence, analytics. Before we get started, can you share a little bit of your journey and how your career has progressed over the last few years?
Yeah, you kind of covered a good background about my, experience and where I come from, but I'll say that, my journey around my curiosity around data itself started when I did my undergrad in IT, and then soon after I started working, and that's where I realized how data kind of defines any kind of business decision that we make in this world, be it any kind of industry, right? Data is kind of a backbone of everything. And
Hmm.
then that kind of helped, it got me into pursuing my master's degree as well, where I specialized in business intelligence and analytics. And there I understood, how data can be harnessed in many ways to gather actionable insights, and which can be used in many kind of business decisioning that leaders make these days. And after my graduation, I started working at Ernst Young. I worked there for 8 years, mainly focused in understanding and quantifying and also mitigating financial risks. And all of
Yeah.
that was done by building data-driven solutions. And I got the pleasure of working with industry leaders, they're experts in the field of data, many data scientists, and I got to learn a lot from them. And then eventually, after 8 years of being in finance, financial risk, I decided to shift my industry focus. And now I'm in e-commerce slash retail, where I'm trying to explore more in how data can be intersected with product management to build
Yeah.
innovative, creative solutions, and how we can improve our customers' experience and their journeys using these kind of innovative solutions. So
I would have to say it's a very interesting journey because you're started out in the consulting world,
yes,
and more on the advisory point,
yep,
and then making the jump towards like the practitioner world of actually doing it and doing the implementations that you advised on previously. So that's
yeah,
a very interesting part.
yep,
Let me dive a little bit deeper in that first stage because I've been in consulting a lot. A lot of organizations bring you in to solve a particular problem,
Mhm.
and you've been really in that wave of transformation where organizations started towards data-driven decision making.
Yeah.
Now, whenever you first met a new client or new company that requested your help, what was like the key elements that they're looking for? What was the thing that they couldn't figure out directly themselves,
Mhm.
for which they said, well, this is where we need to bring in additional consulting expertise?
Well, it really depends on what kind of engagement we work on, because there were engagements which were mostly focused on understanding or building a new target operating model for a client, which meant,
Okay.
we need to understand their whole landscape, be it data landscape or infrastructure related or anything. We had to do a current state assessment, and we got in experts, and at some point I started calling myself also as an expert in that field, where we could bring in like industry institutional knowledge and see what was missing in a company's data landscape, and how can they
Mhm.
evolve and meet their competitors, or be better than their competitors. So that was like, doing their current state analysis assessment and seeing how their target operating model should look like.
Yeah.
So that was one point of view that we used to bring in as in an advisory capacity. Obviously, like, we can't directly recommend that this is what you should go with, but we would always give them like options of what they can go with.
Absolutely. And from your experience, over all the customers that you work with, what was the number one thing that's frequently missing in that environment?
Oh, just one thing.
Yeah, we have some time, so we can go in depth. Don't worry.
Well, I would say, like, there were a couple of challenges that we faced in when we work with multiple clients. One thing that actually was missing was, I would say, a collaborative environment, and also
Yeah.
having, how do you say it, the communication styles are always different, in an individual client, for example, right? There is, when you're trying to build a new data landscape in itself, you have to deal with multiple departments within a particular organization. It can be IT, it can be treasury, it can be finance, it can be your compliance, and everybody has a different communication style, and you need to like adopt to them and see how you can like translate each department's language into what other departments can understand, and how you can build a data landscape which is aligned and everybody can consume it. So adaptability is something that you learn, but one thing that was missing was, not missing, but something that we had to like adapt to was communication style, and also having a collaborative environment.
It's very interesting that you mentioned communication style, because a lot of people that or organizations that go through this whole transformation typically focus on, the technology side of things, BI tools, solutions, underlying databases, establishing data warehouses. Whereas, and I've seen this in our work as well, is that it very frequently is more around the soft skills part, right? So you mentioned specifically communication. Um, if you kind of make a generalization around all the clients and all the work that you've done, would you say that the soft skill or the human element of data is frequently underestimated in these kinds
Oh
of
yeah,
projects?
I would say so. Yes, uh, I think it's an acquired skill as well. Like, even in terms of like the data skills that we talk about, right? Like, not a data person will understand highly complex concepts, but cannot easily translate into something that a senior executive could understand. And I think that's
Yeah.
where we have like these so many advanced tools these days in big data analytics that can help aid in in those kind of conversations, be it visual analytics, or be it like, any of these fancy dashboards that are out there which can be used
Yeah.
to translate that. So I think soft skills, technology can also aid soft skill and help in, building that bridge between having different kind of communication styles.
Yeah, yeah. So in this series, I had a couple of previous guests who really advocated for things like data storytelling, so the
Yeah.
ability to communicate, or helping people to move from a more technical oriented focus towards being able to communicate with data on a more, I would say, understandable level, so that's being interpreted.
Yeah.
Um, why is it that we as IT people are generally not the best in that area?
Well, I won't say we are not the best, because we are so concept driven. We
Yeah,
forget that forget the storytelling element of it, I think. And someone who is not technically concept driven or is not deep in the weeds of the technical aspect of building anything, all they
yeah,
want to understand is a one liner on what are you trying to do and how does it impact me. And
correct.
I think we IT professionals sometimes forget that they are too much into the complexities and innovation part of things, while a business stakeholder might be more bothered about how is the work that my IT guys are doing impacting my business goals. That's what
Correct.
that's sort of the two sides of things. And I think that's why sometimes we forget that storytelling is so powerful, and that helps build or give more value to our work itself and tell us like, okay, how is my work contributing to the end goal of any company that I'm working for. But yeah, that gets lost in translation when we are like looking at the complexity. How do I innovate it, and how do I like be more creative in my solution rather than actually.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, it is a very creative profession, so that's something that if you then also have the ability to communicate about that effectively, that makes like a whole world of difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think we have visual analytics, which is very
Yeah.
powerful.
We're good. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail as we progress. But before we do this, Mridula, I would like to first focus a little bit around your one of your key areas of expertise, which was risk management and the way that you could use data to help model, understand, quantify, maybe also even mitigate risk in the financial world. So for everyone who's listening for the first time or has no idea around what risk management is or how you would use data to do that, can you explain a little bit around how big data is used to quantify and manage financial risk, and give a bit of background around how do you make a model for that?
Yeah, sure. In my past experience in EY, I did have the opportunity of using analytics to a very large extent, to basically identify different kind of financial risks. So when I say financial risk, it's pretty broad, but it can be as simple as understanding how a bank will assess their credit portfolio to see how much,
Hmm.
whether they are in a position to lend money to borrowers or not. So that's called as credit risk assessment. There is also liquidity risk assessment, where in any kind of financial calamity or disaster situation, does a financial institution have enough capital allocation to survive? That's also one way to like assess risk. So there are different forms of identifying financial risk, and analytics kind of plays a very powerful role, I would say, when it comes to quantifying and actually identifying these kind of risks. There are different modeling techniques that are out there, different machine learning techniques that are out there, both supervised and unsupervised way of identifying risk. Supervised way, I mean, where we can actually monitor key factors in an environment, key risk factors, which are like market volatility,
Hmm.
increase or decrease in your interest rate. And by factoring all that in a model, we can actually like predict what kind of financial risk events can happen, and how can
Yeah.
we be more prepared. So that's one way of assessing. There's also predictive way of doing things, and also there are like different kind of models that can be used to see how we can simulate a stress scenario. Like imagine like the worst financial calamity that you can imagine, and we can actually simulate those kind of financial shocks and see how much capital reserves a company has to survive those kind of calamity, and if they don't, what kind of strategies can they come up with to mitigate them. So that
Yeah.
those are like different ways in which you can actually quantify.
It's very interesting because I'm always very interested to learn how this actually works in a real organization. I think it's safe to say in banks there's a lot of legacy
Mhm.
systems, and so you typically, or at least from what I've seen, you typically don't have one unified data warehouse or unified data lake. In most cases, you need to kind of aggregate from different parts. So how do you do that? Do you build a layer on top of all those different data systems, and you run your machine learning algorithms from there, or do you first try to aggregate it into one source of truth? Or what's the most common approach?
Well, it's mostly like aggregating data from varied system, I would say, and then
Okay.
automating the process, because building one single layer from all the different sources is a bigger task. And sometimes you need to like respond to certain kind of risk events faster, and this
Yeah.
can be the faster way of just aggregating data from multiple sources and then automating your data collection, how you transform them, and how do you like apply different kind of rules and modeling techniques to see how what the outcome is going to be
Yeah.
like, and how can we respond. So that's one of the easier way, I would say. Obviously, like building a layer would be more ideal, because that way it can be more uniform, consistent, and the way it's been consumed, it's accurate as well all the time. So that's also another way of doing it. I'm not saying you cannot do that, but the approach I have used is aggregating from multiple.
Would require likely a little bit more time and a little bit more
Yeah,
budget.
more exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So, one of the things you just mentioned is, in some cases, these things need to be determined also fast. And I remember when I took my first machine learning courses almost close to a decade ago. We already had the standard case study, which is identifying whether somebody will default on their credit cards. It's kind of like
Yeah.
one of those standard ways in which people learn the basics of machine learning. Now, in a real organization, that obviously needs to happen fast. You cannot just have a 24-hour period to kind of do the calculations and determine that risk. So, to what extent in the work you've been doing are these financial institutions able to make real-time decisions? Because it's obviously much more complex to do these things quick. A lot of organizations want real time, but yeah, saying you want something and actually having it is something different. So,
Mhm.
so what's been your experience in that part?
Well, in my experience, I think statistical analysis in a way plays a big role
Hmm.
in real time detection of any kind of uh, changes in your risk factors,
Yeah.
or any kind of financial or operational metrics. If there's any kind of change, statistical analysis kind of helps with that. What I mean by that, and this is kind of a good segue, because you mentioned your experience in machine learning and how you understood credit default. On similar lines, we also try to like do loan approvals very quickly for a borrower, and that's called as probability of default, to understand how likely is it that a borrower will default on a loan. That means
Yeah.
that how likely is it that they'll pay their loan on time or not pay their loan on time. How risky or not risky is it to. And that needs to happen sometimes really quickly when there are like a lot of borrowers coming into you, be it an individual or a large company, right? And also over time they need to like keep monitoring them to see what is their probability of default, and how much trouble am I in as a lender, in terms of giving the money out. So in those cases, I think statistical analysis can help a lot, because those models can give you real time view on how the changes are happening, and how can you monitor them and detect them early on.
Absolutely. Now, one of the main things, and I'm just going to build a little bit on this. One of the main, I would say, newer approaches in this area is um, traditionally the way that we used to do this is by analyzing data sets within the bank.
Mhm.
You might integrate with data that you receive from a credit rating agency or something like that. But now we've entered the era of big data, social media, videos.
Oh,
People share a lot of things online. There's a lot more data that you could potentially integrate into your financial risk modeling. And I'm specifically talking about things like things that people post online, news messages, predictive instability in the world, maybe incorporating backgrounds from people from articles that exist online.
yeah.
There's a lot of different things that you could potentially do that. And my question and what I was wondering is, do you see that already happening in larger financial institutions, and to what extent is that actually being done?
Yeah, I mean, those are all your unstructured data, right? Where
Yeah, correct.
so you have your structured data where it comes in like a neat format, neat packed format. You don't in table or files, and you can actually like analyze them very quickly. Then whatever you mentioned, like your social media, market news, all of that, those are all your unstructured data. And how do you like mine that data to get insights out of it?
Yeah.
Um, I think world is moving towards more adoption of NLP modeling, like natural language processing, especially to see how unstructured data can be used to gather insights. Um, in my experience, I have been in projects where we've done sentiment analysis and also negative news analysis to see where is the shift happening in market, what's the market volatility look like, what are the different conditions, what is the probability of something that's going to happen in the near future, and how can we adapt to it, how can we be more proactive towards it. So unstructured data use, or I would say insights that come out of unstructured data is highly valuable in that case.
Hmm.
And NLP modeling has been growing a lot. Even in my current role, sometimes we use that to see how we can uncover different insights which we haven't seen. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think to a very large extent, world is moving towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a trend that we see everywhere. Um, One of my follow-up questions in that regard is, do you think, or from your experience, that models are actually able to do a better job in doing these kinds of predictions? In other words, are these models going to be more accurate now that we have access to all of that unstructured data? And let me kind of give the context. On this show, I also once had a person that worked at a credit rating agency,
Mhm.
and they have been testing all kinds of different models with trying to incorporate social media profiles and things like that. And he says, well, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort, but we and this is obviously what everyone looks at in terms of like, this is the way that the world is moving, and this is going to be the holy grail if we can get a full profile of somebody. But the other side, he said, is that he said at this moment in that particular situation, they did not yet have proof that that would make the model any more accurate. So still, like basic, your structured data that you collect around people is in many cases already quite telling. And because there's also so much garbage in the whole social media domain, and what's out there, it's very difficult to condense that into a model that will actually make your predictions any better. So I was wondering what your take on that point
Well,
is.
so there are few things when it comes to actually analyzing unstructured data, right? It's
Mhm.
always a testing kind of approach where you test and train your model more. And by if you have to train, you have to train it with different kind of data sets. um, in terms of unstructured data itself, it's so vast. Like you said, there are different kind of noise. There is, if you're trying to go through customer reviews, there's also sarcasm. How do you like make sure that that's not a true review, they are being sarcastic in the review? So all of those factors, it comes with analyzing different kind of data, and analyzing these outliers as well, having
Hmm.
mechanisms to analyze these anomalies and outliers and see how can we classify and assign different categories or topics to this, and then how do we come up with a final outcome of, based on these different topic classification, this is what we are looking at. So it does require a lot of training. You
Yeah.
need more data to be fed into these models. It's not like you can just, like in your traditional way where structured data, you have everything neatly lined out to you and you just like go through, you're just applying your business rules. It's not as straightforward. So it is, I would say, you have to train your model a lot with more
Yeah.
data to see. And every time there's like, every time you have fresh set of customer reviews or social media posts that comes out, right? Every day, every minute, there are like thousands of posts that are coming out. So how do you like make sure keywords and etc are taken out, and we actually see what's happening? So it
Uh,
is, it's a lot. It is it the good part is, it you can use that for analyzing vast amount of data. It has that capability, right? That's the beauty of it. And you can use that to come up with any kind of topics that you have, and also help in aiding your business decisions. So I think it's a testing kind of fun approach. I don't know if that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah. Good. And that brings us to obviously the thing everyone is talking about these days is artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So yeah, there's absolutely not a show in on data where we cannot move that. How is AI going to transform this domain? And what have you seen are things that are real practical, and what are some of the main risks?
Well, when AI was just started, it was again, it's a trained model. You're like again
Yeah.
feeding it, and it's like giving you information. Your chat GPT also is trained enough to give a structured answer for you for any kind of question that you ask. But the challenge with that is, they call it the black box problem, where there is no transparency in how it's coming to that decision.
Yeah.
And I think now the term explainable AI is being used a lot, where
Yeah, that's a very good one. Yeah.
yeah, where it'll actually show how it arrived at a particular decision, and why did it give you that. So I think the challenge is not having that transparency can also lead to a lot of problems. So having more transparency in how AI is used, and ethical use of AI, which I think shows that how are the different algorithms, or it won't go to the algorithm level, but it actually will tell you what exactly happened for it to arrive at a decision. I think that's, having that would be a good thing, I would say.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
challenge
I
right
like
now is
I
not
like
doing
what you
that.
say in terms of explainable AI because um, I do a lot of kind of lectures, either with students or conferences. And one of the first questions I always like to ask is who's using large language model, and you see in the room everyone is raising their hand. And then the next question I always like to ask is who can explain how it works. And then you see that it's kind of like, if you're at a tech conference, there's a few people raising their hands, but generally speaking, if it's a more broader audience, nobody knows. And that's exactly what you just mentioned in terms of having a black box where you could very easily go into situations where there is a, let's say, credit rating, or you need to make a decision. Let's say you have a bank employee who puts all the info into a machine, or into a machine learning algorithm or AI solution, and the answer is no. But then not having the ability to be able to explain then to a customer, this is why we are either declining this, or the risk is too large, or things like that. That's going to make it very tough and difficult, but also is enlarging the disconnect between the people who actually are affected by these kinds of decisions versus the people who need to be able to use this. And then it really becomes this literally black box that nobody knows around of what is happening. So and that brings me, it's a kind of a long intro. It brings me to my next question: is how can we make sure that while we are using all of these new technologies and building algorithms for risk analysis and risk management and all the decisions that come with that, how can we make sure that we do that in a way that it still remains trusted and that people say, this is a system that I can really build my decisions on?
I think one way to do that is, at least in my previous world, right, when I was in financial risk, compliance was a big part of it.
Of
Compliance
course.
and having like good audit trail and traceability of how you're using your data was a
Hmm.
big component to that, because uh, there were like so many different kind of regulatory standards that institutions had to like comply with. And anytime we use any kind of new technology, we had to make sure that it's used in a way that's more transparent and there is more ownership and policies around it. So, good governance framework, a good data governance framework kind of helps ensure all of that, because a governance framework will lay out policies around how are you sourcing your data, how are you using your data, who's owning it, and also making sure that it's consistent. There's also like different kind of data lineage tools that comes under these governance framework, which actually kind of tells you from your source to the final use where what are the touch points where you've used them. So
Yeah.
I think people underestimate how important a good governance framework is, but I think that helps ensure that it's used in a way that it should be used, and it's consistent over the years. And also scalability and flexibility also comes into play there, because as companies keep adapting themselves to different regulatory standards, these frameworks help in making sure that you don't change a whole lot of things. It keeps adapting
Yeah.
itself to different standards as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree with you that a data governance framework is something that is of paramount importance. Now, for those who are listening and that might not know what it is, can you give like a 1 minute overview of explaining what is it that we mean with the data governance framework?
Think of it like all the laws that somebody lays out for you on how you need to use your data. So, a
Hmm.
governance framework kind of gives a set of policies to you and says, how should what should be the format of the data that we need to use, what should it be, what should be the controls that we need to apply, what are the set of security rules that we need to apply so that the data is encrypted and also sensitive information are not exposed. So think of it like you're a citizen of a country and you're following all these laws, so there's a governing body giving you all, prescribing all these laws. That's sort of an analogy that I can draw to a data governance framework.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent analogy. Now, I'm assuming that you do most of your work in the US, right? So
Yes.
correct. So, are there any specific standards that you look at because there's a lot of work being done by a lot of different governmental and non-governmental institutions in order to improve this issue? Do you reference or do you use certain governance standards as a basis, or are there any best practices that you're familiar of?
You mean by regulatory standards?
No, more like suppose that I'm listening right now, and I would like to say, we in our company we also need to have a data governance framework or data governance approach. Where do I start?
Well, there is a whole. I did the certification called ITIL. I think it's
Okay.
IT Governance Library. they have a bank of different kind of frameworks that companies can adopt. So that's a go to place for me to see what kind of frameworks do I pick, what kind of data controls that I need to apply for any kind of data that I'm looking into, what kind of security compliance that I need to put into place to make sure there's more better encryption and security around the use of data itself. So that's one thing that I've been using or I've used in the past. Not in my current role. Data governance is not really in the product space. I haven't used it as
Yeah.
much. But yeah, that's one area or one library where I can go. And they keep updating their versions every time, so you can like use them for your guidance. It's
Yeah.
like a guiding principle that you can use.
Yeah. Um, last question around data governance, at least, is should there be a role for government here? That so some people are saying, we should come up with a kind of a mandated standard for organizations of a certain size, especially now with the topics that you just mentioned, responsible AI, the way that we process data from citizens, the use of their public social media profiles, etc. Do you see that there's a role for government in this area, or do you say, we should leave this to the market?
I have like two different opinions on this.
Hmm.
Yes, I think there should be some sort of governing law on the ethical use of how we use this AI technology, as well as ethical use of data itself, especially when you're using customer data for your own benefit. There should be an ethical way, and there should be some sort of governance around that. So I would say yes, but it shouldn't be to an extent that it's hindering your day-to-day job, like not to
Yeah.
an extent that it's like it's preventing you from doing your basic tasks as well. So there should be
So
some
not
sort
too
of,
restrictive in a
not
sense.
too restrictive, but there should be like some compliance and some governance around that.
Okay. Perfect. I think that that's a very good way to approach this. And that brings me to my last question. You probably know that I ask this to all of the guests who are here. So suppose that I'm a young person. I'm 18 years old, and I'm listening, and I say, I would like to be the next Mridula. Um, what is the kind of advice you would give to the next generation of where they should focus their attention?
Well, I would say, like if you're an aspiring tech professional, then make sure that you are adaptable, you're curious, you make sure you have a strong foundation of your technical skills, and also understand how you can translate that to a business person, because that skill is going to take you to different places in a good way. It'll help you grow in your career. So I think that'll give you a competitive edge. So be curious, be adaptable, because world is changing, technology landscape is evolving every day. So keep keep up with it and keep understanding how you can stay up to date with all of these new
And be a
technology.
bit agile. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, be a bit agile. I would say
Good.
adaptable. Be curious, be adaptable.
Very good. Thank you so much, Marie Dula. This has been an absolutely amazing talk. It's been an absolute pleasure to pick your brain on some of these topics, and I think we covered quite a bit of depth in the short period of time that we have. So it's sincerely appreciated that you are here with us today, and I hope I will see you again soon on some of the other initiatives that we're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really enjoyed this talk. This is something that I don't get to talk every day, and I like the way you like ask like these different questions, which took me down a memory lane of my past work experience and the kind of things I did. So this was a lot of fun. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.